What did the original investigator of the Madeleine McCann case discover that was so dangerous he was removed from the case? Today, we will open his forbidden diary and reveal the story of an investigation that was sabotaged at its peak. This fact, documented in the case files but often distorted, reveals an uncomfortable truth about power. Sometimes the most effective way to bury a truth is not to refute it, but to destroy the messenger. And tonight, we will give a voice to the investigator they tried to silence and show the evidence he gathered before he was stopped. The story the world knows is a drama that brought the world to a standstill. Praia da Luz, Portugal, May 3rd, 2007. A holiday resort, a group of doctor friends enjoying dinner. The devout parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, relax just a few meters from the apartment where their 3-year-old daughter, the angel child, sleeps. Around 10 at night, the mother returns to the room and finds the bed empty. The window open. Chaos ensues. A frantic search begins. The world press turns the little girl into an icon and her parents into victims of an unimaginable tragedy. This is the official narrative, the story that became a myth. That story traveled the entire world. And speaking of which, a curiosity just occurred to me. What city are you watching me from right now? Comment down below. It's always amazing to see how our community of curious minds spreads across all continents, all connected by the same search for answers. Now, let's get back to the story they told us. But what if the most important story isn't about the disappearance, but about the investigation that followed? What if the real crime wasn't what happened in apartment 5A, but what happened in the corridors of power months later? The hidden truth, which we will begin to unravel today, is that the original investigation led by Inspector Gonçalo Amaral was following a logical trail of evidence that pointed directly to the parents, and it was precisely at that moment that an unprecedented political and media force intervened to sabotage the case, and exposing this is the first step of our mission. We are building the black box, the complete confidential archive of this investigation. Every video we release is another document we leak into this archive, making public what they tried to hide. We are not going to ask for the truth. We are going to leak the truth until it becomes the only possible story. Operation Black Box begins now. So what was the evidence that Gonçalo Amaral gathered, and how did his removal from the case become the strongest proof that he was on the right track? To understand why Gonçalo Amaral's investigation was sabotaged, we first need to follow his steps. His diary, the book Maddie, the Truth of the Lie, doesn't begin with an accusation, but with an observation. The observation that the story he was being told didn't match the reality he saw before him. Amaral's investigation begins where every investigation should begin, at the crime scene, apartment 5A. The centerpiece of the abduction theory, its fundamental pillar, is the bedroom window. Kate McCann claimed she found it open, with the shutter raised, the supposed escape route of a kidnapper. It's a powerful image, that of a predator violating the safety of a child's room. But the physical evidence, meticulously documented by the Portuguese police under Amaral's supervision, doesn't tell that story. It screams the opposite. Tests conducted by the police, which Amaral details in his book, showed that the external shutter was extremely difficult and noisy to open from the outside. To do so without waking 3 small children a few meters away, in almost absolute silence, would require a supernatural skill, the expertise of a ghost. But the problem is even bigger. Amaral's team found not a single sign of a break-in, not on the shutter, not on the window latch. The dust on the windowsill, a silent witness, was intact. There were no clothing fibers caught on the edges, no tool marks indicating the shutter was forced. The forensic logic here is relentless and direct. The window could only have been opened from the inside. They said it was an escape route. Amaral's evidence showed it was a piece of theater. The story of the door only made the scenario worse. They said the front door of the apartment, the one leading to the patio, was left unlocked to facilitate periodic checks. Let's accept that for a moment. If a professional and silent kidnapper enters through the unlocked door, the easiest, fastest, and quietest route, why, in the name of logic, would he risk everything to exit through the window, a complex, noisy, and physically awkward route, especially while carrying a child? And if, on the other hand, he entered through the window, why would he care if the door was locked or not? The crime scene does not have the signature of a professional. It has the signature of confusion, of a story hastily assembled with pieces that don't fit, like a forced puzzle. The final proof, the nail in the coffin of the intruder theory, is the total and absolute absence of a stranger's DNA. In a small room, a grown man, potentially struggling with a waking child, sweating under pressure, would inevitably leave a trail. A strand of hair, a skin cell on the sheet, a partial fingerprint on the window frame. But there was nothing. The room was forensically clean of any trace of an intruder. The only fingerprint found on the window, the supposed point of entry and exit, belonged to Kate McCann. The crime scene does not point to a kidnapping. It points to a staging. With the crime scene collapsing, the focus of Amaral's investigation shifts to the actors, the Tapas 7. Their statements should have been the solid rock of the investigation, the foundation upon which the timeline would be built. Instead, as Amaral describes, they became a swamp of contradictions, convenient memories, and performances that seem more rehearsed than recalled. Let's start with what we can call the dinner contradiction. The group claims they took turns checking on the children, creating an informal safety net, a comforting image of responsible parents. But when Amaral's team started asking for specific details, who went, at what exact time, what exactly they saw, the story fell apart. No one could agree on the times. The checks that were supposed to happen every 30 minutes suddenly had gaps of almost an hour. People who said they had gone to check on the children were not seen by others. The group's collective memory seemed to suffer from selective amnesia, conveniently forgetting the details that mattered most, the details that could have established a clear and unquestionable timeline. Then we have the ghost sighting episode. One of the friends, Jane Tanner, provided the police with what seemed to be the definitive proof of the kidnapping. She said that around 9:15 p.m., upon returning from her own apartment, she saw a man carrying a child in pajamas walking away from the McCann's apartment. The image was powerful. It fueled the abduction theory for months and generated a composite sketch that circulated the world. The problem? The story didn't hold up under scrutiny. Jane's description of the man, his clothes, the direction he was walking all changed several times in subsequent depositions. Years later, in 2013, the British police themselves in Operation Grange concluded that the man Jane Tanner saw was most likely another tourist, an innocent British father carrying his own sleeping daughter from the resort's kids club. The main eyewitness to the kidnapping, the woman whose story shaped the entire initial narrative, in fact, saw nothing related to the crime. The cornerstone of the official narrative was, and always has been, an illusion. Their story simply doesn't add up. What do you think is the most glaring inconsistency so far? The testimony about the window or the confusing dinner times? Leave your analysis in the comments. Each of your theories is an intelligence report we add to our file. Together, we are mapping the weaknesses of the official narrative. When the words of witnesses become useless, when stories contradict each other and the truth hides behind performances, a good investigator needs a silent hero. A witness who cannot be intimidated, who has no loyalty to anyone, and who does not lie. Science. And it was Gonçalo Amaral who, in July 2007, requested the arrival of science to Praia da Luz in the form of 2 elite sniffer dogs from the British police, Eddie and Keela. And what they found not only contradicted the official narrative, it blew it up irretrievably. It is crucial to understand that Eddie and Keela were not ordinary search dogs. They were highly trained forensic specialists. Eddie, a Springer Spaniel, was a cadaver dog, trained to detect only the specific and subtle odor that a decomposing human body leaves behind, even in microscopic amounts and weeks after the fact. Keela, another Springer Spaniel, was a blood dog, an expert in finding traces of human blood, even if it has been cleaned up. Their trainer, Martin Grime, was one of the world's leading experts in the field, with a track record of success in hundreds of cases, including disasters like 9/11. These dogs were not amateurs, they were the elite. When they were taken to apartment 5A, weeks after the disappearance, the result was chilling and unequivocal. Inside the apartment, Eddie, the cadaver dog, gave a strong and clear alert in several locations. The most significant was behind the sofa in the living room and inside a closet in the parents' bedroom. It is important to understand what this means. It does not mean there was a body there at that moment. It means that the odor of death had been present and had permeated those locations. Keela, the blood dog, also alerted behind the sofa, indicating that not only death but also blood had been present in that exact spot. Science, through the keen sense of smell of these animals, was telling Amaral's team that a tragedy had happened within those four walls. But the most damning discovery, the one that completely destroys the abduction theory, came later. The dogs were taken to inspect the car the McCanns rented 25 days after Madeleine's disappearance, a silver Renault Scenic. In the trunk of that car, both dogs had the strongest reactions of the entire investigation. Eddie alerted to the odor of a corpse. Keela alerted to the presence of blood. The logic here is relentless. A kidnapper, a stranger, would not return weeks later to place the body of his victim, or traces of it, in the family's rental car. The only explanation that logically connects these dots is transfer. Something, a body or objects contaminated with the odor of death and blood, was moved from the apartment to the trunk of that car. The samples collected from the locations where the dogs alerted, including the trunk of the Renault Scenic, were sent to the Forensic Science Service (FSS) in the UK, one of the most advanced forensic laboratories in the world. The McCann's defense and the British press would later try to discredit the results, but the initial facts documented in the case files are clear. A sample taken from the trunk lining, designated Sample 3A, produced a partial DNA result. In an initial communication to the Portuguese police, the laboratory stated that the sample contained 15 of Madeleine's 19 DNA markers. To put this in perspective, the probability of another person in the general population having that same combination of 15 markers is astronomically low. Although the complexity of the sample, mixed with DNA from other people, made it legally inconclusive for a conviction in court, the message to Amaral's investigators was a thunderclap. It was not proof of guilt, but it was overwhelming corroborative evidence for what the dogs had already indicated. Let's add up the facts that Amaral's team had in hand. A crime scene that makes no sense, testimonies that contradict each other, and now science. Dogs that find the scent of death in the apartment. The same dogs that find the scent of death and blood in the trunk of a car rented weeks later. And in that same trunk, a significant match with the DNA of the missing child. The abduction story cannot explain any of this. It becomes a fantasy, a fiction that crumbles under the weight of physical evidence. Science was screaming that a tragedy happened within those four walls and that its consequences were transported in that car. A truth that cannot be denied by press officers or lawyers. So, if Amaral's investigation was following such a logical and evidence-based path, why was he suddenly stopped? What happened behind the scenes that led to the sabotage of the most famous case in the world? Gonçalo Amaral's investigation was not sabotaged because it was weak. It was sabotaged because it was too strong. The evidence his team gathered did not point to a mystery, but to an uncomfortable conclusion. A conclusion that, if made public, would destroy the image of a perfect family and create an international scandal. Forget the story of the kidnapper. Science and logic point in a much more tragic and human direction. The night of May 3rd probably unfolded in a very different way. Let's reconstruct the events not based on what they said, but on what Amaral's evidence suggests. The night begins with a miscalculation. The McCanns and their friends, all doctors, successful professionals, are on vacation. They want to relax, enjoy dinner, but they are also parents. The solution they find is a dangerous compromise. Leave the children alone, but with periodic checks. They believe they are in control of the situation. The children, including Madeleine and her younger twin siblings, are given a dose of a children's sedative like Calpol to ensure they sleep through the night. This is not an accusation. It was a relatively common practice, but it is a crucial factor. Around 9 o'clock, Jerry McCann does his check. He enters the apartment, but this time something is wrong. Maybe Madeleine didn't react well to the sedative. Maybe she woke up disoriented. Maybe she fell out of bed and hit her head. Or the darkest theory, maybe there was an accidental overdose of the medication. Not a malicious act, but a mistake. A fatal mistake. Jerry finds his daughter Madeleine lifeless. The panic that sets in at this moment is not the panic of a father who has lost his daughter to a stranger. It is the cold panic of a doctor who has made a mistake that cost his own daughter's life. The career, the reputation, the image of a perfect family. Everything is about to crumble. The first reaction is not to call the police. The first reaction is damage control. He goes back to the dinner table, but he doesn't tell the truth. He can't. He needs time, he needs help. He confides the terrible secret to Kate. Their pain is real, but now it is mixed with a paralyzing fear. The plan is formed in desperation. They cannot admit negligence. An accidental death would be a scandal that would destroy them. The only way out is to create an alternative scenario. A break-in, a kidnapping. It is the only narrative that transforms them from negligent parents into victims. They need time to hide Madeleine's body. The alarm is only raised by Kate at 10 o'clock, giving them a window of almost an hour to begin the cover-up. Madeleine's body is wrapped in a sheet or blanket and hidden, perhaps in the closet of the parents' bedroom, the same place where the cadaver dog, Eddie, would give a frantic alert weeks later. The window is opened from the inside. The shutter is raised. The crime scene is staged. When Kate screams, "They've taken her," she is not lying about Madeleine's absence. She is lying about the cause. The panic the friends see is genuine, but the source of that panic is the secret they now carry. The frantic search that follows is part of the theater. They need to appear as desperate parents. And in the following days, while the world shows its solidarity, Madeleine's body is moved, probably during the night, to a safer location before being finally transported in the trunk of the rented Renault Scenic, the same car where the dogs and the DNA analysis would find the traces of death. To understand why intelligent and successful people would make such a catastrophic decision, we need to understand the psychology of narcissism and self-preservation. Jerry and Kate McCann were not just parents, they were successful doctors. They lived in a world where image is everything. The admission that their negligence, even if accidental, led to their daughter's death would be the end of everything they had built. Their medical careers would be over. The stigma of the parents who killed their daughter would follow them forever. The human brain, when faced with an existential threat, does not operate logically. It operates in survival mode. The primary instinct is to eliminate the threat. At that moment, the threat was not a kidnapper, it was the truth. The cover-up is not born of malice, but of a terrified selfishness. It is what psychologists call confirmation bias in action. They cling to the only narrative that saves them, that of the kidnapping, and begin to believe it, or at least to act it out with desperate conviction. They are not thinking like grieving parents. They are thinking like crisis managers. Every interview, every appeal, every tear becomes part of a public relations campaign to sell the kidnapping story to the world. The problem is that for the lie to work, it needs support. Alone, they would crumble under the weight of interrogation. They need their friends, and this is where the tragedy turns into a conspiracy. The pact of silence is formed, not with a blood oath, but with knowing glances, with the unsaid, with loyalty to a friend overriding loyalty to the truth and to a dead child. The group closes ranks. They understand, even if they never admit it aloud, that the group's survival depends on the survival of the lie. So far, does this reconstruction of the facts seem more plausible than the story of a phantom kidnapper? Does the psychology of fear and self-preservation better explain their actions than the pain of grief? Leave your verdict in the comments. Your agreement is the green light our operation needs to use our most powerful proof. Because the evidence I'm about to show you now is not a theory. It is the proof that seals this case. The definitive proof, the piece that transforms our analysis into an inescapable conclusion, is not forensic but psychological evidence. It is the very secret struggle that gives this video its name. Witness accounts, including from members of the group of friends themselves in initial statements that were later downplayed, describe a heated exchange of accusations between Kate and Jerry in the first minutes of the chaos before the united front for the police and the media was formed. The exact words may have been lost in the panic, but the essence of the fight is universal and revealing. "It was your fault. You were the one who insisted we have dinner here. I told you it wasn't safe." These are not the words of accomplices to a crime planning their next steps. They are the words of two people whose world has just imploded, and their brains, short-circuited with pain and panic, are desperately looking for a place to put an unbearable blame. The psychology of acute trauma teaches us that this reaction is perfectly normal. It is the fight-or-flight mechanism manifesting verbally. When confronted with a traumatic event that is beyond our comprehension, the mind seeks a culprit to try to create order in the chaos. Blaming the other is a primitive way of distancing oneself from one's own responsibility, even if indirect. The decision to leave the children alone was a joint decision. Therefore, the blame is shared. And a shared burden, when it is too heavy, often turns into a weapon that one throws at the other. The fight is not proof that they were hiding a crime. It is proof that they were human. It is proof that, at that moment, they were not the cold, calculating parents that the media would later portray. They were two terrified people, drowning in guilt and fear, and attacking each other in the only way they knew how, through accusation. The fight is the signature of negligence, not of murder. It is the sound of a terrible mistake coming to the surface, not the silence of a premeditated crime. This human and chaotic reaction makes the cover-up theory even more plausible. Because a cover-up born of panic is not clean and perfect. It is messy, contradictory, and full of mistakes. Exactly like the crime scene and the statements we have seen, the fight is the piece that connects everything. It explains why they needed a kidnapping story, to erase the guilt of the negligence that was at the heart of their first reaction. With the proof on the table, the question changes. It is no longer, what happened to Madeleine, but who helped hide the truth? The answer involves a conspiracy much larger than just a panicked couple. It involves the power of an entire state. The McCann's secret fight, the psychological signature of panic and guilt, should have been the starting point for an investigation focused on negligence and a possible cover-up. The Portuguese police, led by Gonçalo Amaral, were on that path. They had the forensic evidence, the contradictions, and now the understanding of the couple's chaotic dynamic. They reached the point of declaring the McCanns arguidos, or formal suspects. But it was at that exact moment that the investigation ceased to be about finding the truth and became about politics, power, and influence. The truth was not just buried by a group of friends, it was cemented by powerful institutions. As soon as the McCanns were named suspects, a public relations and diplomatic pressure machine, funded by millions in donations, went into action. Because of the formal suspicion on a couple of British doctors, the consequence was overwhelming diplomatic pressure from the UK government on Portugal. The British Prime Minister at the time, Gordon Brown, and his ambassador in Lisbon became personally involved. The narrative in the media, especially the British media, changed overnight. The Portuguese police, who were previously seen as partners, were systematically demonized, portrayed as incompetent, lazy, and even cruel for daring to investigate a middle-class British couple. Because of the sniffer dog's findings, the consequence was a campaign of scientific discredit. Experts hired by the McCann's defense appeared on every TV channel, ridiculing the evidence, calling the dogs unreliable and the samples contaminated. Because of the DNA result that pointed to Madeleine in the car trunk, the consequence was the British Forensic Laboratory backtracking on its own findings, issuing a final report that classified the sample as inconclusive, a legal technicality that ignored the overwhelming probability. The system was turning against itself. The tools of justice were being used to manufacture doubt. The final consequence was inevitable. In 2008, less than a year after naming the McCanns as suspects, the Portuguese Attorney General's office, crushed by political pressure and the media smear campaign, archived the case. Kate and Gerry McCann were cleared. The message was crystal clear. The truth about what happened to Madeleine McCann was too inconvenient. It was easier, safer, and politically more advantageous for everyone involved to maintain the fiction of the phantom kidnapper than to confront the reality that the responsibility could lie within that family. Justice was not blind, it was deliberately muzzled. The price of a cover-up of this magnitude is never paid by those who commit it. It is paid by those who dare to challenge it. And the biggest collateral victim of this conspiracy of silence has a name: Gonçalo Amaral. He was the chief inspector of the Portuguese judiciary police, the man responsible for the initial investigation. He was the first to suspect the McCann story, the first to see the cracks in the narrative. It was he who followed the trail of evidence, who requested the sniffer dogs, who built the case against the parents. He was doing his job. But for daring to do his job, he was crushed. Amaral was abruptly and controversially removed from the case, accused of criticizing the British police in an interview. He retired from the police force and wrote a book, Maddie, The Truth of the Lie, where he detailed his theory and the evidence that supported it. The reaction was immediate. The McCanns sued him for defamation, initiating a legal battle that would last more than a decade. They didn't just want to silence him, they wanted to destroy him financially and professionally. Amaral's book was banned in Portugal for years. He was ordered to pay €1 million in damages to the McCanns, a decision that nearly bankrupted him. Although higher courts later reversed that decision, the message was sent to any other police officer, journalist or witness who dared to question the official version: tell the truth and you will pay the price. The story of Gonçalo Amaral is the story of how the system protects its own, even if it means devouring its own servants. He became the scapegoat, the man punished for being right. His career was destroyed not by incompetence but by his refusal to participate in the farce. He is the human face of injustice in this case. It's outrageous, it's frustrating. And that's exactly why Operation Black Box exists. If you also refuse to accept the silence and believe that the truth needs to be leaked, then this is your call. Officially join the operation. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every subscription is a new agent enlisting, making our movement stronger and proving that we will not stop until the black box is opened. In the end, the official verdict is an insult to intelligence and justice. The Madeleine McCann case remains officially open but unsolved. Over the years, the British police have spent more than £12 million on their own investigation, Operation Grange. They followed hundreds of leads, investigated dozens of suspects, but never came close to an answer. Why? Because from the beginning, Operation Grange operated under a flawed premise that there was a kidnapping. They refused to seriously re-examine the possibility of an accidental death and cover-up. They built a multi-million-pound investigation on a foundation of sand. Meanwhile, the McCanns and the Tapas 7 moved on with their lives. They were never forced to answer for the contradictions in their statements. The secret fight, the first sign of the collapse, was swept under the rug. They won. They managed to sell their story, supported by a system that preferred a comfortable lie to a devastating truth. The absence of a body allowed for legal, reasonable doubt, but there is no moral doubt. The evidence, when viewed together, tells a clear, consistent, and terrifying story. Justice did not fail for lack of clues. It failed for lack of courage. The system won. Justice was buried. But in the midst of all this darkness, one final question remains, the most personal of all. What does this terrible story teach us about our own world? And what do we do with this inconvenient truth? The inconvenient truth that this story teaches us is that sometimes justice is not blind, it is selective. My final conviction, after analyzing every failure and every decision, is that the mystery of Madeleine McCann persists, not for lack of clues, but by a deliberate choice. What haunts me is not the complexity of the crime, but the simplicity of institutional negligence. The truth was not lost in a complex conspiracy. It was filed away in a folder, a victim of bureaucracy, prejudice, and convenience. And that is the most infuriating truth of all. And now, after we have gone through all this together, I need to know what this story has awakened in you. Use the comment section below not to judge, but to bear witness. Witness your frustration, your outrage. Leave a word, a sentence, that shows we have not forgotten and we do not accept the silence the system has imposed. I will read every comment, because in a world that wants us to be silent, our collective voice is the only weapon we have. And for those who want to go beyond bearing witness and want to help fund the next phase of Operation Black Box, there are 2 ways to do it now. First, you can use the Super Chat to invest directly in our next intelligence acquisition. Every contribution, of any amount, helps us obtain the next confidential document or pay for the next forensic analysis. It is your way of funding the ammunition we will use to break the next lock. Second, for those who want a seat at the strategy table, you can become members of the channel. Members are our elite operators. They not only ensure the continuous funding of the operation, but they have access to our war room. They see the documents before everyone else, vote on the next targets, and discuss strategies in a closed group. The Super Chat funds the next move. Being a member helps to draw the game map. The choice is yours. And it is thanks to the support of our operators that the next phase of Operation Black Box is already underway. In our next video, we will expose the contradictions in the testimonies of the couple's friends, breaking another lock that protects the truth. To continue in this operation with us, subscribe and turn on notifications. The search for the black box cannot stop. Until next time. Remember, we are not going to ask for the truth. We are going to leak the truth.